Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. What I'd like to talk about this time is integrated marketing communication. Now, this topic is a strategy, really. It's a stance you take as a company. And in fact, all companies have to adopt an integrated marketing communication approach, or they'll simply fail in today's marketplace. We used to rely heavily on advertising. And until the 1990s, we didn't have the technology yet that has created the social media that we use today. And think about it, we have Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and plenty of others. Uh, these are places where people interact, and this is where commerce has moved. So it's not enough now just to do advertising. We have moved into the time of promotion. And so when we look at promotion, advertising certainly is the largest portion of that. Um, and there's a whole list of promotional items. So the idea of integrated marketing communication is really that. And if we think about what the word integrated means, it means a situation where things work together, that and when we look at things working together, that they support each other, we have to say, well, if there are activities going on, then this is a process. So what we have with integrated marketing communication is a process, and it's also a strategic stance, a mindset that all companies have to take. And what this is really about is furthering your brand. That's what integrated marketing communications does. It furthers the brand. And so integrated marketing communications wants to present a consistent and easily understood message to all those consumers out there that you are trying to reach. Here's the learning objectives for this time. By the time we get through working with this material, you'll be able to define promotion and indeed what integrated marketing communication is. You'll be able to discuss a basic model of communication and what happens in a marketing situation. You'll be able to describe the different ways of classifying audiences for promotion and how this works within the overall framework of IMC. And finally, you'll be able to explain the key role that IMC plays today as a business practice. Now, certainly, as I've mentioned already, it is key to doing business today. So let's just talk about promotion in general. And when we talk about promotion, we're generally talking about a mix of things. And so there are many items that make up any given promotion. And as you can see here, the top item certainly is advertising. But we have all types of tools that we use uh, to support advertising and also to reach people is really what it's all about, and to give that message about the brand consistently that you want people to receive. So we have sales promotions, and we have information at point of purchase places. When you go into a store and there's something on a counter or there's some signage, that's point of purchase advertising. We have direct marketing, which is really about a mail piece that you will receive. We have personal selling, which mainly takes place these days in business to business sales and so forth, but we have a lot of personal selling that goes on, for instance, automobiles. And then we have all sorts of internet advertising. But when we talk about internet advertising, we're really not talking about advertising on the internet. What we're talking about is the websites that you visit have advertising that pops up and informs the viewer. So you have banner ads and you have footers and you have things on the side that show up and things like that. That is internet advertising. And then we have the various types of social media that I've mentioned. We have blogs and podcasting. We found out in just really in the last year or so that blogs aren't really that effective, that most people can't assemble enough people, regular readers, to come in and interact with these things. And so blogs are not really as powerful as we thought they might have been maybe 10 years ago. But podcasts, we have video all over the place. I produce podcasts. I produced them for this course. We're doing one right now. And then we have other things that we can do as promotional tools. Remember, this is a strategic stance. This is a mindset that we adopt, and we want to be integrated and consistent. So that means whichever of these tools that we are using, they all have to have that same powerful message, and it's got to be a message that we convey easily with some assurance that it will be understood. So we do things like event sponsorships, and we have branded entertainment where we see products in other entertainment. For movies, for instance, you see a brand name beverage or something, some other signage within the movie that's really not there by accident. That's branded entertainment. Advertainment. We have outdoor signage. Then we have things like billboard, transit, and aerial advertising. Well, you would say, okay, billboards are a form of outdoor signage, and they are, but we really don't include them in that. What we're meaning by outdoor signage is the stuff that we see from individual businesses and franchises and things like that, right at their place of business or nearby, pointing you to how to get there or what they have if you're in the area. And then we have other things that are promotional tools like public relations material, and then influencer marketing, which is really people talking to other people. Um, and think about it, there is one company out there that has no marketing budget, which goes against traditional wisdom, and they rely completely on peer-to-peer comments and reviews and so forth, and that is Zappos. And then we have various forms of corporate advertising, which advertise the major company itself, and so forth. So you can see that promotion really has a lot going on, and there are a lot to choose from. Now, think about what happens to yourself in your daily life. You'll go on the internet, and an ad will pop up as you're just looking at the news. That ad didn't happen by accident. Marketers know where you're at. They know your computer address. When you log on, Google knows who you are if you're using Chrome and so forth. And ads begin to appear. It's not by accident. It's in response to some other activity that you've done. And you will see the same thing happen when you go to your Facebook account or Instagram or wherever you go. You're going to find a variety of messages. And they're all going to have the same theme, but they won't be necessarily the exact same message. They might be, but there'll be variations of the same idea. And so that is really what promotional marketing is all about. That is integrated marketing communications, IMC. Now, when we look at advertising itself, what we have to say is advertising is paid for. So it's paid communication. It doesn't happen by accident. It's something that you contract with, you pay money for, there's an exchange, a transaction. And the client or sponsor pays for the advertising, and they are paying the medium, the channel, the company, whatever it is, which however you want to identify that, that will provide them access and will provide that space for them to present their message. Now, publicity is not advertising because it's free. So if you don't pay for something and it gets on the internet and say it's a favorable thing that speaks about your brand, then you've received some publicity, but it's not advertising. So for instance, as a very good example used in the textbook chapter, someone who wants to promote a movie goes and visits a late night talk show host. Is that advertising? They're there to talk about their movie, or maybe it's an author with a book that they want to talk about. This is not advertising. Generally, that person is paid to show up, but they're not paying for advertisement. They're going to talk about it. And so they're there for that purpose. Therefore, it's not a paid advertisement, it's publicity. And publicity is free. So it is a different type of advertising, a different type of promotional tool. And what we have to say about advertising is that it is always mass mediated. So think about what that means. It's on a medium or a channel to reach consumers that is very broad. It will reach many different types of consumers at the same time. So when you do something like that, if you're using something like corporate advertising, you're trying to reach a certain number of consumers who may be interested in products your corporation provides or services, and you're building your brand image. You're keeping your name aware in the minds of consumers. But the mass mediated effect of advertising happens on television, where you reach anybody who happens to be watching. The same with radio, the same with newspapers and magazines. Direct mail is mailed out generally to a list of consumers that the sponsor of the advertising thinks will be good recipients for the message. And so it goes directly to them. It's a mass mail out. Even though it comes to you specifically, you're within a mass group picked for that. And the same with billboards. Certainly, as you drive by on the highway, wherever you are, and you see a billboard, that is a mass sort of communication that whoever happens to be by is going to see it. And the same thing happens really when we look at websites and podcasts and so forth. This is mass mediated advertising. It's put out there and it will reach a lot of consumers. Not all consumers, but it will reach a lot of consumers. Now let's contrast advertising with personal selling. Personal selling is really not mass mediated. It's face to face. It's person to person. And so the environment is completely different. We don't see as much face to face selling as personal selling going on today with businesses to consumers as we did in the past. We used to have many more salesmen and products that had to be pushed by salesmen. Vacuum cleaners, silverware, dining sets, all sorts of products, particularly automobiles and things like that. It's going to be personal selling. But today, even personal selling in the automobile industry is changing. If you've seen recent advertisements for these new companies that will let you buy something online, will deliver the car, buy your old car from you, pick it up, and so forth, and you never go to a dealer. So advertising in general is a different form of communication than personal selling is. And where we find the most personal selling is in business to business. You're not going to do too many mass communications to members of a business profession, although you will, because it is one of the audiences. But because it's a mass mediated thing, you want to be very specific with those customers. And those customers are not quite as susceptible to the mass mediated messages. They want personal selling and they want to develop professional relationships with other businesses. And so personal selling comes into play. Advertising really, at the end of the day, when you examine it, is always about persuading you to do something, to take action now or to remember something later, but to persuade you that maybe you should consider, if you're not going to run out and do it right now, by purchasing our product or service into the future. So we have integrated marketing communications. Here's a little history. It began approximately in the 1990s, and marketers really just came to the realization that the communications and all the promotional messages have to have the same message. They've got to be consistent in that sense. They've got to be easily understood as well. Before, the emphasis for marketers prior to IMC, it was really about communicating, reaching the customer. And it was more about actually reaching them and identifying the segment that you want to sell to and actually delivering your message. But it wasn't as much about the content of the message. And today, with the rise of technology and the way things have changed and just society in general, we now want to make that personal contact one that we can do from a distance, in fact. And so it's not just about reaching them and communicating them, it's about convincing them that the brand has value. And so this is all about the brand, whether it's a specific one in a family of products or whether it's the overall brand. So the emphasis has shifted to the brand from communicating, just reaching consumers, to now we're trying to reach them and communicate the message of our brand and all the benefits and features that it has to solve your wants and needs. So doing that, we use those promotional tools I've just talked about, advertising being the biggest one. And we want to create a meaningful brand idea in the minds of consumers. When we use all these various tools, we're really saying this is our promotional mix, the mix of tools and methods and mediums and channels we're using to reach our customers. Now we'll talk about who our customers are and how we identify them in just a moment. But I really want to emphasize here that IMC is a process. It requires thinking in an integrated and coordinated fashion. And the idea is we want to reach our target customers with different kinds of messages in different ways. So our advertising, we can do it many different ways. We form an advertising campaign. And we take that advertising campaign and we spread it across our promotional tools. We pick not every tool, but only the tools that we think will reach that segment of customers, our target, and the ones that we think will want to buy or follow through with our service. So we do it in multiple media. And there can be many advertisements with a similar theme in multiple medias, but they want to be consistent. where they say the same thing in different ways, or they hammer on a few benefits or features over and over in ways that are different depending on the medium that you see them in. So the idea is we use this IMC to combine our advertising to make a real promotional mix, and we can do other things within that advertising mix. So we run our advertising campaign, we target a certain group of people, and we pick our themes that we want to emphasize consistently across the different platforms or the mediums. So what do we do to enhance these tools? Well, we run contests. We try and get people to go to our website where we find ways to interact with them. We sponsor events and so forth where our brand name gets out there and our message with the brand name gets out there at the same time. So you can see a contest or a website content or sponsoring an event are all different places and different mediums that a consumer, a target consumer, one that you know maybe wants your message, or not maybe, but does want your message. But because those mediums are also different, the message is going to have to be crafted differently. And then you will also have those found on point of purchase displays. Some little thing on the counter somewhere on a nearby the checkout in a store where it reminds you of their brand name, and maybe a tagline that repeats one of the themes that the company is interested in pursuing with you, the person who's interested in their products and services. So we're really talking about mass mediated communication, and that's the way to think of it. This is something, the message is spread out in a large channel, but within that large channel that they know their target audience watches along with a lot of other target audiences, they can craft a very specific message to reach those people when they are watching this mass mediated channel. So not face to face, happens through a medium, all of this IMC. And now here's the communication model. And it's got a nice little graphic in the textbook, but we're really talking about a three-phase model that's really not about the way we look at communication in other business classes, where it's sending a message, we encode it, we transmit it, the receiver gets it, they decode it, and you go through this communication process. That's what we've changed with IMC in marketing. We've now gone to this new way of reaching you. So we're going to have different phases in this. It's not about just reaching the customer, it's about the message. And the message, of course, is your brand. So the first phase is production. This is when the marketers in whatever firm or organization you're in craft a campaign, an advertising campaign, a promotional mix is put into play, and it could be many different people working in different parts to put all this together in a compilation of one promotion. So not only do you have the promotional mix spread across many different tools with slight variations of the same message, but you also have a generally, in larger companies for certain, the work, the crafting of these things, working across different subgroups of people, different professionals, putting it all together, and so forth. So that's the production phase. That's done by the people who are putting together the advertising, the promotion. The second phase is accommodation and negotiation. Well, this is really where the target audience this is directed at makes an interpretation of what you're telling them. And because people are so different, each consumer in your target audience, even though they share what you think are common needs and wants, there's still going to be individuals who will receive the message and interpret it slightly differently. It will appeal to them strongly in some areas, weaker in others, because we're all individuals. So the accommodation is receiving the ad and paying attention to it, choosing to let your selective perception allow this message to come in shows that you probably are in the target market for this product or service. Just the fact that you're listening to it and you're paying attention to it. The negotiation is where you figure out within yourself, what does it mean? So we're accommodating the messages of consumers, we're negotiating what it means within our own minds. And then the third phase is the reception. This is what our final evaluation of the message is, of that mass mediated communication. And we're either going to act on it depending on the type of message it is, or we're going to file it away for future use. But if it's successful, it has raised awareness or caused us to act, or it's persuaded us to do something. Now, this really speaks to the idea that we are all individuals within a target audience. We're all going to look at things slightly different, but we share enough characteristics to be saying that we're in the same group. So there is no universal meaning any particular ad is going to have. People are going to interpret it slightly different, but the overall theme is what we want to get across. So there is always an interpretation, whether the consumer has listened to it intently or just casually, a minimal evaluation or an extensive evaluation. But there's always some evaluation once a consumer decides that they're going to pay attention even a little bit. So you can reach people even a little bit if they're in your target audience, if you craft your messages right. Now, think about it. If a person has seen your message with a slightly different take on the same theme so that you realize it's the same message, you've made some progress. You've reinforced it. And so that's why we choose many different tools in the promotional mix. So this is the part that really matters. This is the heart of IMC, and in fact, our entire course. Targeting and learning how to segment and understand who your customers are. So we have to first look in a broad way at who are the audiences. Well, here's some definitions for you. The audience really is the group of individuals who you hope will receive your message and interpret and negotiate the meaning of those IMC messages. And our audiences are of different types. Let me take a look here and see if I put that on the next slide for you. I have, so I'll talk about those more specifically. Now, our target audience is amongst our general categories of audiences. We pick one that is going to contain those individuals who are our main target for our various messages. They become our target audience. So it is a specific group of consumers that we've singled out from a group of different audiences that are available to us. And so we'll look at these audiences and you can see how they pretty much include all of the consumers out there in one way or another. And then that group is singled out and your message is speaking directly to those people. So first, your audience categories, household consumers. This is the source of where most mass-mediated advertising and promotional mixes are directed. Household consumers. And just think of the many industries that have products that household consumers are interested in, why that is definitely the largest category of audience. So you would find you're trying to sell a product or service, you know that it falls into that general category of household consumers. You very specifically want to have a message that resonates with a specific group of those household consumers, your target segment, in other words. The next group is members of business organizations. Okay, so these are the people who run the organizations. These are employees of the organizations. These are members of firms that produce business and industrial goods and services. A mass-mediated message will go out on television. People who run companies, people who are employed by companies just like you and I, are members of business organizations. We hear these messages. They influence us. It may be a message directed at specifically members of a certain industry, a certain type of business, companies that provide certain types of goods and services. That would be your target audience, and you would be very specific as you craft various messages within different tools to reach that same group. Members of a trade channel. Okay, so we're talking about other business people here, retailers, distributors mainly. Now, these players are target audiences for not only household goods, but also business goods. So if you have a new product in a very active industry, you would be able to reach retailers and distributors through a mass-mediated promotion, like television, like radio, like newsprint, magazines, and so forth. Next, we have professionals. Now, professionals are people who have specialized training, they have certification, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're teachers, they're people who have bona fide professions, they have their own jargon and so forth, they work within an industry and so forth. They have, in other words, very specialized needs and interests. You can reach those people by picking the right mediums. So in my case, I'm a professor of business. How do people who want to sell me something reach me? Well, the first thing they use is email. Because they know I'm a professor at a certain college. I am getting emails all the time from newsletters. There's dozens of them out there concerning higher ed. They target me. They know who I am just because they can find that information publicly. And I get a constant stream of those sorts of things. I also get book publishers, and then people who want to buy books from me, used books, and people who want to sell me books, and new breakout publishers contact me. I get civic leaders from different organizations contacting me or my chair with messages saying, hey, we've got an internship for if you've got a student who's interested in this sort of thing, or we've got a job opening and we like the people we're getting from your school. So professionals certainly are a target audience. You can reach them with certain media. You could also reach a teacher or a professor with something that's mass media on television or radio. Just depends what the product or service is and whether or not they are members of using that channel enough to justify your choice. And then finally, we have the audience category of government officials and employees. Now, this group has large dollar amounts of buying. Think about it. If a government agency needs to buy laptops, they're going to buy them for a good long while. So as people come and go and new models come out, they're going to purchase laptops from you over and over as long as you treat them right. And so they are a specific target audience. You can reach them through mass mediated, but you can also reach them through mailing lists, email if you can find it, websites, all sorts of things. And so these are our audience categories. This is how we begin to determine how to segment our target audience and really find out specifically where to send our messages to influence these people we're talking about. So we can also use a little bit of audience geography. We have global promotions, international promotions, national, regional, local, and cooperatives. So let's just work through some of the details. Global promotions are for products that are pretty much the same all over the world. They're standardized. They can kind of use the same message for their product in any country, as long as they put it in their language and all of the appropriate sort of modifications. But think about it. Riding on an airplane is the same everywhere around the world. You buy a ticket, you get on the airplane, they provide certain amenities or they don't. These are the rules. And so you can use a global promotion for different types of airlines. For instance, we might see an ad for Scandinavian Airlines here in the US. That would be a global promotion, and it would probably have a similar message in Europe and the US. The only thing that would change is the languages and so forth. The message would remain essentially the same. Think about Starbucks. They are a global commodity, and they advertise their product the same everywhere in the world. Now, brands whose manner of usage doesn't vary between cultures, like an airline or drinking coffee, those are global promotions that you can use. You could see how that would really be a benefit to a corporation or company that had a product that fell into the standardized category, but most products don't. We have international products, or excuse me, promotions. These accept the reality that most markets are different culturally and socially and so forth. So different messages in different national markets. We aren't going to market Coca-Cola exactly the same in the US as we are going to market it in Brazil or in Germany or in Asia somewhere. National promotions. These are ones limited to a single country. Reaches all the geographic areas in one nation. Regional, I think we get what regional is. Regionals are generally done by producers and wholesalers and the retailers and all of that to catch something within their general region, that target audience. It's usually, we would define a region, it's a relatively large, but it's not national in scope as a geographic region. Local promotion, similar to a regional, it's directed at an audience in a single trading area, which would be smaller than a region or a national. So we're talking a city or a county or a state even. And then we have cooperative promotions, which is a team approach where the producer, the manufacturer of a product or good or service, whatever it is, will share the costs of a promotion with the local retailers, so to speak. And each, they will give a certain discount and they will do some national advertising. Retailers will pay a little bit, but a reduced rate. They may get some other support and benefits in the deal. It's a cooperative sort of promotion. Now, when we look at our marketing mix, the marketing mix is what we talk about in principles of marketing. It's our product. It's price, distribution, and promotion. And that is the basics of marketing a product. So we do our promotion within those four areas. And so any of the messages that come out of the Product area about benefits and features, for example, that would be in the product area of a marketing mix. They have to be consistent with the messages that you're putting out there uh, to your target audience. So you've got to be consistent and easily understood. That's the definition of what I've said IMC is all about. And so your role with IMC is to promote and communicate the value of your brand, whether it's through talking about the benefits and features of a product or the benefits and rewards you'll get from using a service, whatever it is. It's all about communicating the value of the brand. This is a step forward from where we used to go, just reaching with engaging the consumer, letting them know our name, and that's pretty much the end of it. Now, we're going to tell them all the great things that they can get, and that's where the gist of our message is. The thrust is going to be about value and raising awareness, really, of our brand image. Now, consumers are demanding value. That's really what we want to provide for consumers when we attempt to fill their wants and needs and so forth. We have to do it by providing some value. And some of the things they're looking for value, some of the areas include like a convenient location, good credit terms, favorable credit terms, warranties and guarantees, how we deliver the product, and so forth. And certainly that emotional response that is going to be produced when people get a new product. The social status or the display status that we get from it socially and so forth. All of these things have to be consistent within our marketing mix within these four main areas of marketing. So we're going to look at price and distribution, and we're going to keep our message consistent. So I've been talking a lot about brand, so let's talk about brand a little more distinctly. A brand, what is it? Well, we see it represented all the time by something tangible, a symbol, a name, a term, a sign, any feature really that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from other sellers. That's a brand. And our brands can actually be even worth more than the entire value of our company, depending on how you look at it. The chapter talks about Coca-Cola in this instance, and that's so true. Coca-Cola is the #1 recognized brand name in the world. It has that high of an awareness. The brand value of Coca-Cola is many times more than the value of the company itself, which is in the billions. So I think that just illustrates how important brand is, that it precedes the product and people verify their evaluations and their interpretations of the product against what they know about it and what they've heard about it and what its real reputation is. Well, we want to support brand image with IMC. That's what this whole strategic stance is about. So we use information and persuasion in our messages. We're talking about features and benefits. This comes right out of the product section of the product mix. We're introducing a new brand or a brand extension. Now, a brand extension is just taking an existing brand and moving it into a new area, a new product area where it's never been before. And so IMC works in conjunction with all these other tools to introduce new brands and brand extensions into new territory. You found a new use for your product, say. That's a brand extension. It's going to be now used for something different. You've extended into a new area of usage. That's all that really means. And then the third way that we can really support our brand development and raise awareness is creating that image in the minds of consumers, and meaning that they attach to that brand when they hear the name or see the logo or whatever it is. The whole impact of everything you do with IMC is to convey some sort of meaning that the consumer will attach to the brand. And so, in a way, you're bridging the consumer with their own social environment and finding where the place of that brand image fits into it. In other words, it creates a place in the consumer's mind, a space where brand image lives. It's in your schema and what you think about it. And so once you have that with the consumer, then certainly another way that we support the brand is by building and maintaining that loyalty within the brand. And so you have to, if you want to do it within the trade, for instance, if you work with a lot of retailers and you're the main supplier of a good or service, it would certainly mean that you would do better business and have more profitable business if you had trust and good relations with all the retailers. And so you want to provide meaningful support. where you're available and you work together as a team to build value, build image, and of course, make profits along the way. So the point of IMC is to not just reach the consumer, but to reach them and have them attach some meaning about the brand to the product or service. So we do market segmentation like I've been talking about. We have to identify who those people are. Well, I've talked about it a little bit how we identify them. They are our target consumers are members of audiences, and these audience categories generally fall into very specific groups of people. So within those groups of people, we're going to say, let's begin our market segmentation. And so we take that audience category, and they're not exclusive to each other. You may have an audience category more than one for a product or service. Your message has to be consistent across all those different categories, but the message will be different, certainly speaking to an audience of professionals versus to an audience of household consumers. But the message has to be similar enough. It doesn't have to be the exact same message, but it's got to be consistent. So your process is to take that large heterogeneous market, which is heterogeneous meaning it's very different and varied, and you've got to break it into submarkets or segments. And those segments are going to be more homogeneous in nature. They're going to be more similar. Each of the segments you identify of people who want your product or service, they're going to be filled with consumers who have similar wants and needs. That is the process of market segmentation. And so you're actually segmenting by the needs and the wants or desires of consumers. So you identify your consumers first, and it makes sense to begin with the broad general audience, work down within the audience, the certain type of consumer, and then craft messages specifically on mediums or channels you think will easily and best reach that particular group. And then keep them consistent and easily understood. So you're going to use a lot of other basic tools when you start segmenting. Once you look at the audience category and then break it down within categories, you're going to look at other things. Demographics, in other words, some statistics that guide you to craft your message. And you're going to use things like age and marital status and gender and income to do that. Again, it's all integrated, it's all coordinated. Now, there are three things that we want to do. We want to differentiate, and then we want to position, and so forth. I'll work through these for you. When we differentiate, this is not quite the same as we talk about it in business when we put together our strategies of differentiation, making ourselves unique and different from other products and so forth. We do that, but our objective is a little different. We want to create a difference in the minds of the consumers. We're not talking about the physical look of your store where it's different from your competitors, or your layout or your business model is different and so forth. What we're talking about is differentiation in the mind of the consumer that really sees you as completely different from other firms who offer competitive products and services. And so we're really talking about perception. Consumers, as I've started out talking earlier, are all individual, and they're going to look at the same thing and have some slightly different individual differences in how they perceive that meaning. And so it is all based on consumer perception. What we want to do is link the meaning that consumers get from your ads across different platforms, because you will try and reach them with many different ways, and then link it to the brand firmly in their minds. When they think of certain things, they think of your brand. So we do some positioning as well. We design the brand to occupy a distinct and valued place in the consumer's mind. It's a perceptual space, really, in the mind of consumers. And so consumers really are storing information, like we know from other information we've received as business students, that we have schemas. And that's where information is stored about different things in individuals' minds. And so the perceptual space in a consumer's mind linked to brand image has things in it, like the quality of the product or service, taste, price, social display value. Do I feel esteemed from having the product, or whatever it might be? So we don't want to forget those things. And we integrate this knowledge across the platforms and the different tools with the different messages. Now, our position is going to be either external or internal, and all products or services are going to have both. We don't see that internal positioning as a consumer. The internal position is the niche the brand will occupy within the firm with other brands. So the internal positioning is really for the company itself and how they perceive their brand, its importance in relation to the other brands, and so forth. But the external position is what we're really trying to convey and pursue in the minds of the consumers that are out there in our target segment. So it's the niche the brand will pursue relative to all the competitive brands on the market. Where do consumers see us? Are we the best? Are we most expensive? Do we have the best quality? Those are all different positions of quality, taste, price, social display value that consumers are going to value. And they're going to make that distinction, and it'll be in their minds, and it will be the position it occupies relative to the competition. So the idea of IMC is to help us make more money as a company. And marketing doesn't directly generate revenue, but it creates all the situations for revenue to happen. So we have to have IMC in today's companies, or you simply will cease to exist. So it does enhance revenue and profit through this variety of activities. Now, we want to create pricing flexibility. The idea here is pricing flexibility allows us to raise or lower prices as we need to without a huge reaction or an adverse reaction from our consumer segment, the people who are buying and supporting our products and services, right? We want to have pricing flexibility. We have to do what business says we have to do. And we want to have that flexibility. It's not always possible, but we want to create it. So IMC contributes to this with good, solid promotional marketing plans that create economies of scale. Economies of scale lead to lower unit production costs as we take our fixed costs and spread them over a larger number of units we've made. Each unit costs less. Economies of scale help us make more money, and that helps us to create pricing flexibility. We can't create economies of scale without doing good IMC promotion. The second way we can create pricing flexibility using IMC is helping to create inelasticity of demand. Now think about it. What does elasticity mean? Elasticity means things can stretch, they can move, they can accommodate, right? But if you're inelastic, things do not move, they do not stretch, they do not bend, they stay the same. When it comes to inelasticity of demand, in other words, we don't want demand to lessen. We want it to be inelastic. Certainly we would like to create greater demand, but we're really talking about price here. So let me hone in on that specific factor of this. A situation in which consumers are relatively insensitive to price increases for the brand helps create inelasticity of demand. In other words, if you raise your price and consumers are insensitive to the price increase, you can do it and you won't get a huge backlash. Now, is it possible to have a group of consumers who are not sensitive to your price increase? It really depends on where the brand has been positioned in the mind of that consumer, and that's up to you to create. If they have to have your product because they can't live without it and they won't accept substitutes, you have created a situation in the mind of the consumer where they're fairly insensitive to price increases. It's that way for Starbucks. Think about it. Starbucks can increase their prices a little bit. There's blowback, but are they going to lose a great majority of their customers with a small increase in price? Probably not. That tells me that Starbucks probably has a certain amount of price flexibility, and that happens when you create inelasticity of demand in the minds of the consumers. They're willing to accept it. There isn't a good substitute. Now, think about it. There is plenty of competition out there, particularly in the last few years recently. Look at all the drive-through coffee places that are out there. It's a proliferation in that industry I've never seen before. Think about it 5 years ago. Starbucks everywhere. Now Starbucks has little drive-throughs everywhere, but so does the competition. So it's going to be harder, don't you think, that to create that inelasticity of demand in the minds of consumers for Starbucks now, that there is so much solid competition where people can go to another quick drive-through with pretty good quality coffee, depending on how you feel about it in your own mind. So this idea of pricing flexibility is really built on IMC creating these economies of scale and creating consumers who like your product so much they become a little insensitive, excuse me, to price increases. You really want that flexibility. Now, you're going to stimulate demand when you run a promotional mix. There are two types of demand that you can stimulate out there. You can primary demand stimulation and selective demand stimulation. Well, primary demand stimulation is for a complete industry, a complete category of product. So running an ad to get people to drink more milk, like is the main example in the chapter. The milk industry itself. In other words, primary demand stimulation, if you run a big promotional mix and a program like the Milk Producers Trade Association did a number of years ago with the milk mustache and the big drink milk category, it simply doesn't work. The facts are that primary demand stimulation is ineffective. It doesn't create new milk drinkers. It costs a lot of money. It's challenging and costly to make a primary demand promotional mix, and you're not going to get anything. And in fact, the milk industry has been seeing declining consumers, up to 20% over 5-year stretch in the early 2000s. And the milk industry thought, the trade association, well, we'll run primary demand stimulation. We'll get more people to want to drink milk. It didn't work any better than any other primary demand stimulation promotional mixes do. It's simply not going to increase the number of people who want to drink milk. It doesn't work for a mature product category, in other words. It also doesn't work for brand extensions generally. Now, if there was a new brand for a milk substitute, a lactose-free product or something like that, then you could probably run an ad. But that really wouldn't be an ad for the whole industry. It wouldn't really be primary demand stimulation for a new brand like that. What you would have would be the other type of demand stimulation, selective. This emphasizes a brand. And so you emphasize the brand's benefits and you compare it and measure it up against the competition. So if you were to run an ad for almond milk or a lactose tolerant sort of milk beverage, that might work in the milk industry, but it wouldn't really be primary demand trying to get more milk drinkers. It would be promoting brand extension or a new brand into the milk industry category in general. So certainly you need to know these sorts of things in marketing mix. And who are the ones placing these ads for primary demand stimulation? Well, they are trade associations and various industries. And really, it's an ill-advised sort of procedure. It seems intuitively like this is a great way to go. Let's run an ad and create new consumers. In a mature product category, it's not going to work. It will work in a completely new product category, but a new product category is also going to be full of brand new brands. So there's really the answer there. Now, we also have direct versus delayed response promotions. As part of your mix, your message, you're either going to ask people to act immediately, or you could also have some messages that would be more of brand image building that would be delayed response. So a direct response promotion does ask people to act immediately. Make a phone call right now. Call this 800 number. Go to your telephone and text this number to this number. It asks you to act immediately. That's a direct response promotion. That is a way to engage people. That is a way to get your marketing message across. This is a way to begin that negotiation process of understanding meaning in the mind of the consumer. And you do it picking various tools you think will reach people. But you could also have a consistent message that touts your brand image and the strength of it as a delayed response. You're running an ad to the same people. You're not trying to get them to call now or go to the website now. You're trying to build the brand awareness, reinforce brand benefits, overall image. It will be part of an overall package where you're stressing more or less the same things, because up here, when you ask them to call, you're going to stress certain things, features, benefits. Here, you're going to do it right in the ad. So here are the things that we want to do to wrap this up to promote the company or the brand. We want to do brand advertising. This is the number one thrust of IMC. It communicates features, values, and benefits. And we want to make that particular perceptual space in the mind of the consumers about our brand. And the second thing is there can be corporate advertising as well. Now, corporate advertising is a little bit different because this is going to be done by the head corporation, the firm itself. This is meant to create a favorable attitude towards the company, not towards its product, a specific product or product line or family of products, although they might mention it, but it wants to build the company image itself as the host of the overall brands and so forth. Within this corporate advertising, we have institutional advertising. This happens within the partnership that happens in the supply chain between retailers and distributors and manufacturers and so forth. Institutional advertising is to each other, trying to persuade them and their consumers to shop at the various stores. So say you're a trade association store. When I was a a telephone contractor in the 1980s, I had a business. I would shop at a place called Gray Bar. They have a Gray Bar out here in Missouri. It's a national company. What they sell is electrical products, wiring, telephone products, interfaces, everything you need to be a professional in those industries. Well, that's what I was. I was a professional technician in the telephone installation industry. And so Gray Bar could run an ad on television. It would be mass mediated, but it would really be directed at professionals like me. When you need the best wholesale support and costs, the ad could run something like that. Don't forget, for all your electrical and needs like that, come shop at Gray Bar. And so that's how that institutional advertising might work. Okay, folks. I think that's all I have for you this time. I'll talk to you again real soon.